The true story of The Conjuring is terrifying and based on genuine accounts of the Perron family, as described in the records of the ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were hired by the family when fear for their safety had become too much. Carolyn and Roger Perron, along with their 5 daughters, moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Rhode Island in January 1971. Unbeknownst to them, they had purchased an estate with a sinister history and numerous deaths having occurred on the land. The realtor didn't mention any supernatural difficulties on the first day, but strangely advised Roger to keep the lights on at night. Unusual words to leave someone with after they've purchased a home, but more unnerving was that 3 of the children noticed a stranger observing them unpack from a distance. The haunting began with small things happening at first, which skeptics might easily explain away. Carolyn noticed that after mopping the kitchen floor, small clumps of dirt would appear from out of nowhere. The broom would disappear or move to a different place on its own, and a scratching sound could be heard from the side of the kettle as if long nails were being dragged against the surface. Then things started to get stranger, with events that even the most sceptical couldn't explain away. The girls started to see ghosts in the house, describing many as harmless. However, a couple of them were malicious. As time went by, the Perron family started to experience even more paranormal activities. A young ghost child was often seen screaming and crying for a mother as she wandered the property, and disembodied voices would be heard, including those claiming that troops were buried inside the walls of the house. The youngest daughter, April, frequently interacted with the ghost of a young boy, and occasionally a young girl too. How they revealed themselves to would change, as sometimes they would appear healthy, and other darker times they would show themselves rotting and dead. This led Carolyn to investigate the history of the property, and what she learned sent shivers down her spine and thoughts of terror for the safety of her loved ones. She discovered that the Arnold family were the original owners of the farmhouse and lived there for 8 generations. In that time, at least 10 family members died tragically. These included 3 suicides, 1 by poison and 2 by hanging in the attic, as well as 2 drownings in a nearby creek and 4 men who died from exposure to the cold. Also worth noting is that one young Arnold girl was brutally raped and murdered too, but her passing was reported in another city. But the most horrifying fact is that the witch portrayed in the movie was a real person and the worst spirit of them all. Her name was Batsheba Sherman, who had lived on the Perrons' land during the 19th century. Locals at the time believed her to be an evil witch who killed all of her children before they were 4 years old. One child who died from convulsions is believed to have been murdered by her after she inserted a large needle into their brain. Many believed that she sacrificed young children to Satan in the hopes of maintaining her beauty. When she died in 1885, the coroner reported that her body mysteriously turned to stone. She was laid to rest in a neighbouring Baptist cemetery. Do you believe that this really happened, that her dead body turned to stone? Or do you think it was just superstitious ramblings? The oldest of the 5 girls, Andrea Perron, claimed whoever the spirit was, she perceived herself to be mistress of the house, and she despised the competition my mother created for that position. Andrea claims that the family also encountered ghosts that smelled like decaying flesh, and that mattresses would lift into the air. Also, no one liked going down to the cellar. There was a lot going on. When her father Roger would go down there, Andrea stated he would talk about feeling a cold, stinking presence behind him. Due to the oppressive feeling and odours, the family avoided the cellar's dirt floor, with Roger only venturing down there when the heating system would inexplicably break down. The Warrens visited the house numerous times over the course of their 10-year residence. Lorraine once tried to communicate with the ghosts that were controlling the family by holding a séance, with disastrous results. You see, during the séance, Carolyn Perron became possessed and started speaking in tongues while rising up from the ground in her chair. Andrea remarked, "I thought I was going to pass out. My mother began to speak a language not of this world, in a voice not her own. Her chair levitated and she was thrown across the room." I can only imagine how truly terrifying that sight must have been for the family. In the movie, Ed Warren is seen performing an exorcism, but Lorraine claimed that she and her husband would never attempt such a thing, as this needs to be done by a trained professional of the church. After the séance, Roger forbade the Warrens from visiting again, as he was concerned about his wife's mental well-being. That is understandable, as there is nothing worse than feeling powerless over a loved one and an outsider bringing about such horror, even in the name of the church with hopes of helping. Andrea states that the family stayed put because of their precarious financial situation until they were able to relocate in 1980, at which point the ghosts were put to rest and the hauntings stopped. It seems that their experience at the hands of Batsheba and the other entities stuck with them though, as most of the family refuses to discuss the deaths of the Arnold family members that occurred at the farmhouse, or the paranormal activity they endured. After everything that they went through though, who can say that you can blame them?